Everything you're about to hear is for education and entertainment purposes only. Whilst we are licensed, we're not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Any advice is general advice. Equity Mates operates under Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.
Equity Mates!
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates, a podcast where we explore what's possible in the world of investing. If you've just joined us for the very first time, we have an epic guest for you today. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you going?
Oh, I'm very good, Bryce. Very excited for this episode. When I think back to the early days of Equity Mates, one of the superpowers of building this business was starting early when podcasting was pretty nascent, and there weren't many other finance podcasts or creators in Australia. But the man sitting in the room with us was one of the early ones as well.
Big time.
Unfortunately, we focused on podcasting, and we're working as hard as ever. He focused on achieving FIRE and got there, and then maybe gave it up. We'll unpack it today. But Matt, aka Aussie Firebug, welcome to the studio.
It's a pleasure to be here, guys. I'm so glad you led with that because I was thinking about that as well. I'm like, you guys have been on my podcast a couple of years ago.
Ages ago.
Yeah. And
more than a couple.
2022 or something. Yeah. But I was thinking, like, I have to apologise because it has taken so long for me to come up to Sydney, like to come on this show. It's crazy how we haven't connected earlier, to be honest. We've seen each other at events and stuff like that, but it just has never worked out. So that's on me, guys, but I'm glad to be here now.
Well, it's been an inspiring story.
Thank you.
We're going to unpack it all. Your website says that you're a millennial from Australia trying to escape the 9-to-5 day grind through financial independence. So introduce, I think, yourself to those who haven't heard of Aussie Firebug before.
Sure, that's probably a bit outdated, to be honest, on the website. So me, quick recap. I think I'm a pretty normal dude from regional Victoria. Got a wife, I got a kid, I got another one on the way in a couple of weeks.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So we could be cutting this podcast short and getting the phone call. I achieved a tiny bit of very niche fame in a community called FIRE. And what's funny is when I first started doing podcasts and interviews and stuff back in I started the blog in 2015. And I started the podcast in 2016. And I remember I went on a few radio programs and other podcasters. I think I didn't go on your guys, but there was a few other ones like 2018, 2019. And I remember always having to explain FIRE. It was such a niche concept. I don't know what you guys think, but do you think your audience actually knows what FIRE is? Or is that something I need to unpack?
I think now that it's probably a much more recognised concept than it was 10 years ago.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
Do you know when it became mainstream? I distinctly remember is when it popped up on Netflix. There was a Mr. Money moustache and
Really?
Yeah, I'll teach you how to be rich guy.
Not the documentary about the failed festival.
No, not Fire Fest. It had the acronym on the screen, and I'm sitting at home and I'm like, wow, look at that. My wife Christine, I'm like, look at that, Chrissy. This is on Netflix. It's trending top 10. It is definitely not a niche community anymore. But back to your question, so I started full-time work and I didn't particularly enjoy it. I didn't mind it. There was aspects that I like doing, people I like working with, but I just thought, I don't know, I had it in my head. I'm like, this is insane. I'm not doing this for 40 years. I don't even like being here that much. There's hundreds of other things I'd rather be doing. And I went searching for an alternative path to life and stumbled across the concept of FIRE. And I started a blog and podcast journey in me and my wife's journey to financial independence so we could retire early. And that's the quick version.
Nice.
We can unpack any part of that.
Yeah, well, I think we're keen to unpack it. And also, you fast forward to today and you've got a kid, another one on the way. We're also interested to unpack how your views have changed in that time.
Yep.
But take us back to 2015 when you started making content around the FIRE journey. What was the thinking then? Did you have a number you were chasing? Did you have a timeline that you were trying to hit? What was the original intention? My
journey is very much pre-overseas trip, which happened in 2019, and post-overseas trip, which we got back to Australia 2021. So pre-trip, I was like a saving psycho. as most people in the fly community are.
Or as Bryce says, eating beans and rice.
Yeah, I didn't quite do that, but like it was. I had my spreadsheets. I was and I'm still analytical. You know, like left hemisphere. I can't remember which one's which, but I love puzzles. I like chess. That's just the way I'm built. I think that's why I was attracted to fire. And I think that's why a lot of like tech bros traditionally are attracted to fire as well, and people that are mathematically that way. And I had all my spreadsheets, and I had my fire portfolio goal back then was like $1 million invested. Okay. And that, based on the 4% rule, would yield 40 grand a year. And the lifestyle that I was living back then, that was fine.
You had a partner at that stage?
I did. So we joined finances in 2016. So I was doing it by myself. Like I started full-time work at the end of 2011, and then we were separate, and then it got real serious, and we moved in together, and we joined finances in 2016. But up until then, it was just me. And since then, it's been us two together.
Was it hard to convince her?
She has never really been on the fire train.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right.
She's like, you're doing your weird little fire thing, like, whatever. I'm just going to
You're doing beans and rice. She's ordering Uber Eats.
Yeah. I mean, like, I've got some stories that, it's embarrassing now. Like the levels that I went to save money, and that's something that I'll say to anyone.
Give us like an extreme example.
I mean, I got heaps. So I used to like not top up my phone with credit. Oh, no, sorry. I used to do it once a year because Telstra had this thing that you'd top it up. I used to top it up $10, and I could keep my number so anyone could call me. Anyone could call me, but as soon as I went to call someone, I couldn't call because I was out of credit. So I would just wait to go to a Wi-Fi to communicate, right?
Oh, my God.
Exactly. Crazy stuff, right?
Like, how much are you saving?
Exactly. Yeah. And this is, it's so funny to look back because I'm not like that at all anymore. Yeah. But to achieve something that is very hard to achieve, you have to sort of be a bit crazy. And this goes, you guys you like sports and, different stuff. And you read these stories that people, they just become obsessed with something like a goal. And I was obsessed with that goal. Like, I am saving my way to a better future. And that has turned out to be the case, the way it's turned out. But what I was trying to chase was the wrong thing back then. I thought financial independence was going to solve all my problems, and there's a much faster route, and it doesn't really, because I've taken 2 mini retirements throughout the journey. One 6 months where I quit my job, didn't work at all, and the other one like a year where I did like really light consulting, where I'd work maybe some months I wouldn't work, and other months I might do like 16 hours. It was very light, and I was trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, and like mainly my work life, because you need to work. Like work it's a state. Exactly. Yes, that's the thing I was missing, right? It was in my first job, I was under fluorescent light, sitting on a computer for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in an office. It just sucked. And it sucked because I had I was a junior, so I didn't really have much say in the business, which doesn't help. And then now I understand that as you progress with your career, you get a bit more autonomy and it gets better. But back then I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. There's no purpose here. There's no mission. I'm literally just clocking in to get money. And that was okay, because that's like, I'm giving up my time for money. Okay, I'm going to save a whole bunch. But I didn't really put much thought into what was I going to do once I reached financial independence. And that is really like, you can shortcut the whole process a lot by finding something that what
that would be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm not going to say that you love doing it all the time, because that job is like, doesn't exist. You're never going to love something all the time. There's going to be crap aspects, but am I making a difference is massive. And like now I'm doing something that I can see that I'm making a difference, and it doesn't feel like work. There's still parts that, are not great, but making some very strange decisions to save money that didn't even move the needle, like you said, that much. So
we'll get to what you're doing now, but
yes.
you flagged that 2019 was the turning point.
Absolutely.
So pre-2019, you had $1 million fire goal.
Yes.
You were going to live the rest of your life off 40 grand a year.
I was going to figure it out. But that was,
you were going to somehow convince your partner that was the right amount of money. But then 2019, things changed.
Yeah. So we'd always wanted to travel the world, and I got to 29, and almost like the devil was tempting me. I got a promotion that I've been chasing for a few years, and it was a decent jump in salary, and it was just before we were planning to go overseas. And I thought, oh man, we're on track. Like we're in a real, like one thing I'll give myself credit for is I identified that we were in a position to really get ahead early in life. So we had a whole bunch of things working for us. Really low cost of living. I think at that point we're living together in a unit in Traralgon for like $200 a week.
Wow.
$200 a week. Now we're in Sydney and people are probably listening to that like, what, like, were you renting some sort of shack, like a 1-bedroom shack? No, it was a nice 2-bedroom apartment. Like that's just the country living though.
Yeah.
I was in a decent job. So straight out of uni, I think I got paid, and I'm open with all my numbers because I've got the website, we publish everything, but it's like 70 grand plus super, which back in 2011 was really nice and in a low cost of living area. So I had all these things working for us. So I identified that. And
what percentage of your income were you saving
70.
at that point? 70%.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And I did that for a few years. And when I look back at the spreadsheets and the little net worth graph, that really did supercharge it because I was like a psycho for 3 to 4 years.
So Bryce has told me previously there's not a cent more he could be saving. Like he's got his spreadsheets refined. What percentage of your after-tax income are you saving?
About 30.
Oh, so Matt, you need to review his spreadsheets.
And this is the thing. People, they've had a go at the FIRE community and myself over the years. Australians, there is a big difference between a need and a want. There's a big difference. And I would argue that like 90% of what's in any Australian's expenditure is a want. When you like, if you want to be a full on crazy person about it. And I was a crazy person. And then I met my wife and we moved in together. So she mellowed me out a lot. But then we moved overseas and that was the big one. So I quit my job. I made the decision. I got the raise. I got the promotion. And then I did something my work didn't love. I straight away. So it's like, I'm going overseas. I'm quitting my job. And because I got promoted, I got all my like leave paid out at the higher.
Oh, nice.
You dick. So, but yeah, we went overseas. And one thing I always tell people, if you want to save money, and you're probably already doing it, my number one tip, I guarantee that you will save money. Guarantee. And there's not many things you can guarantee. If you track every dollar of what you spend, you will save money. Guarantee. Doesn't matter how good you are. I promise you will find leaks in your boat. However, that comes at a cost that you've got to do it. And people, like a lot of people don't like doing it. I was just a crazy person. I love doing that stuff. However, when we moved overseas, I knew that would inhibit my ability to enjoy a lot of things. I cannot enjoy beer and pizza in Italy for €100. If I can see, 10 days into the trip that we've already spent $4,000. I just can't do it. So I knew in advance, I'm not going to track money anymore. So I know how much we got in our accounts, but the app that I was using, like I'm just not going to log in. I'm going to disconnect everything. And that was a catalyst for really being able to enjoy money a lot more and really like not caring as much. Because ultimately, like the ultimate goal is to use money to live a better life. And that, like, I'm glad I saved a lot early on, but I'm also glad that I had that catalyst of moving overseas to change my perspective. And I go a bit funny when I'm on holidays. I don't know about you. I start like spending money, buying clothes. Like I just, went a bit loopy. And then we lived in London for 2 years. And then when I come back, I just never picked up the tracking again.
But I mean, you'd put yourself in a position where you could do that. A lot of people would go overseas on a holiday, not in a position where they can just free spend because they've spent 4 years. Really.
And even my free spend would be...
I'm sure you went.
You know what I mean? Like you build so many habits that even when I think I'm absolutely balling, I do look at the statement and I'm like, oh, it's actually not that bad.
So you've come back from overseas. So what were the big changes then? Obviously you weren't tracking every dollar, but in terms of the habits, because this is where Ren and I often look at FIRE and sort of say that the foundations of it are actually a good foundation for just good long-term investing. It's like knowing what you're doing with your money generally and then investing as much as you can so that at some point in time you don't have to rely on the paycheck. Like post travel, what are the things that you're still doing?
Man, not that much, to be honest.
Really?
In terms of FIRE, like I don't consume any FIRE literature.
I guess what I mean is like, are you still investing monthly or like really?
No, like we spend our dividends now. We've changed to consumption.
Wow, you've changed, man.
Absolutely.
Get out of the studio.
Cut the cameras.
Who is this guy?
So we didn't. It's funny because people say, how's your FIRE journey going, for example. Now, it depends on what context you ask that question. The answer I'm going to give changes. And I'm pretty sure I'm on tape in like 2018 or something saying we will reach financial independence. If we haven't reached financial independence by 33 or 32, I'd calculated, something has gone wrong.
Okay.
Now, we haven't done that yet. So we have not reached financial independence. So in that question, we're behind schedule. but in terms of lifestyle design and fulfillment, we're kicking ass. I'm living a fantastic life. So which lens do you want to, view it through? I've really tapered off.
The latter.
Yeah, that's how I think. That's how I think. But there are like some zealots out there that will.
Now, I think, because I was having a look at your website before this, you say you didn't reach fire, but you update your net worth publicly. So we're not speaking out of school, but you were at like 1.5 million. Last year.
Yeah.
So you did reach, you actually exceeded your goal.
Yeah, but lifestyle creep, brother.
Kids.
Although, like young kids, I mean, my daughter's only 20 months old. She doesn't cost that much, to be honest. And from everything I've read and know from my older siblings and everything, the expenses come later.
Yeah.
But definitely lifestyle creep for sure. Like we really, traveling was just so eye-opening for many different reasons. We went to Europe. We stayed in London for 2 years. We visited close to 30 countries throughout those 2 years. We had a great time. And number one positive that come from that trip was definitely the travel. But number two was my falling in love with what meaningful work could be, because I'd never been in a job that was as good as some of the gigs that I worked at in London. One of them actually inspired a business idea that I'm now doing with a mate back in our hometown, which is a co-working space. So I worked at a few different startups over there, and we worked in a WeWorks. And man, it is I'm from a town of 20,000 people. So to go into a WeWorks is just completely mind-boggling experience, and you're seeing people work on something. Like I was sitting next to a guy that was working on Monzo. Have you ever heard of Monzo before?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it was, I don't even know if it's around anymore, a really famous bank in the UK, and all the Aussies use it. Like when I went over there, it was just like the bank that you used, and it was app-based. It was really modern. It's basically, I'm pretty sure copied Monzo.
Okay.
Like legit. It's we come back and it's like, this is a carbon copy of Monzo. Anyway, I was working with next to a guy that wasn't part of my company, but he was working on that app. I'm like, that's so sick. Look at this. This is something that, millions of people use, and you're doing something like it. Just, you could see that meaning and purpose, and everything that I didn't have in my old job was there. And I don't know, it's just a cool work environment. And I thought this is how it was meant to be. And if I went on that trip, my early 20s, I definitely wouldn't have started Aussie Firebug, because there'd be no need. Like I would have had a job that was awesome, and I wouldn't have needed to feel like I was trying to escape it.
You're saying you're actually spending all your dividends.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right now.
And your fire now is reached, because Ren was saying, you had 1.5 mil.
Yeah.
Tick that, but you're saying that.
Yeah, the original fire goal is reached, but now we need a bit more. However, I think so the 4% rule, everyone, the audience probably knows what the 4% rule. I think that is so conservative, and people, I don't know how they do it. I've read people in the fire community will be like, we've saved 2.5 million, 4% we're fine, but we're just gonna be extra cautious and go to 3.5% withdrawal rate. And then they get there and they're like, you know what? We're earning 400,000 a year, maybe just one more year, top up the coffers. And that's a risk in itself. There is a risk of running out of time or falling ill. There's just so many factors. And the only reason I'm still publishing the net worth update is I want to eventually get to a month where we hit our passive income based on the 4% rule exceeds our expenditure for that month. Yeah, that's it. As soon as I hit that, I'm shutting it down. I originally wanted to do a year and the average and everything, but I can't be bothered anymore. I don't even, I spend such little time creating content. The fire community, I'll always be a part of it, but I've so moved on. And I've just got other things that I'm obsessed with.
Nice.
So I guess for people who are listening to this and thinking about fire and perhaps were inspired by Aussie Firebug, what's your message to the young people out there starting their, professional jobs or whatever, and thinking about, I want to get out of here as soon as possible?
I would say there's nothing wrong, saving a whole bunch of money, being really stringent on what you spend and saving a big war chest and having a portfolio. That's awesome. That's never not going to be great, even if there is a quicker way to maybe hop jobs or change different industries or go travel or, do something like that. And I'm romanticizing about this because I had a pretty positive experience with all these things. And I'm cautious that I don't want to tell people to do that and then they go travel and somehow a recession hits or something and then they can't get a job. So there's different environments where things will work and things won't work. All that I know is from my experience, if I had traveled earlier, I probably, it's hard to say. I wouldn't have saved 70% of my income for those 3 or 4 years. But then it's like, what position would I have been in? So it's hard to, know. And the other thing from the various people that I spoke to on Fire is some people just can't find a job that they like really get meaning and purpose from. So for those people, like grinding out a job and saving your way to some level of financial stability, that's still very valid. Like I don't want to romanticize the idea that you should quit your job and do something else too much. But just from what happened to me, I probably I should have went overseas about 3 years earlier.
The episode title, Stop Fire, Start Traveling.
I'm just such a fan. It's it broadened my horizons like more so than just the travel. Like it really changed me as a person almost. Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, and on the other side, we're going to dive into the exact investing strategy that Matt used to build $1.5 million in investments. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Equity Mates. We are here with Aussie Firebug, Matt. Now, Matt, before you said, I think Ren actually said you had a net worth of about 1.5 mil. By the time you went overseas, you were generating passive income. You'd been saving 70% of your income, which is crazy.
It was crazy.
For those that want to try and replicate that in some way, what were you actually doing with that 70%? What were you investing in? What had you determined as the right investment strategy to get you to the 1 million that you were looking for?
And let me just clarify before we begin. So the 1.5 in net worth, that includes home equity, which I don't actually include in the Fire portfolio. So I also don't include super, which is a bit controversial, but our actual Fire portfolio is, I think last time I checked, like 1.1 or something. It is on the website.
I mean, that's still great.
That is made up of, that's like 90% ETFs, cash, and like 2% Bitcoin, which is also controversial. But the strategy, so what we're doing, the question is, I would, classic, I think, Robert Kiyosaki or Rich Dad Poor Dad strategy, pay yourself first. So I'd get the pay and I would put it in my savings account, and then once I got 5,000, I would buy a 5,000 lump sum of one of 3 ETFs. So our split was Australian, US, so VAS, VTS, and VEU, which is the whole world ex America, which also includes like 2% Australian in that. And the original strategy was, I think it was 60% international, 40% Australian. Okay. So I'd split that 20% US, 20%. So 20% VTS, 20% VEU, and no, sorry. Is that right? 30-30, and then 40% VAS.
Yeah.
However, as we went along, and this is a big thing that I'll say that I'm completely changed on like throughout the journey. So at the start, I was very spreadsheets and numbers, math is God, and that's all you should care about. Efficiency is king. But I've changed my mind, and I actually think it is more psychological than it is analytical within reason. And the reason I say that is because we have now switched to a heavy Australian-based portfolio. And the reason we do that is because we love dividends. And we actually spend dividends. And this is where like I'll get into arguments. Not that it's just a waste of time on the internet arguing in general. But if I'm going to speak to someone that actually that wants to listen, I relate a lot of this finance stuff back to health and fitness, which I've been, into my whole life. It's not the diet or the workout that is the best on paper. It's the one that you're going to stick to. That is the most important thing. And with investing, which strategy are you actually going to use to better your life? And for us, that's getting a large amount of returns in dividends versus capital gains.
And so did you sell down your US and internet? You've kept them. You've just now allocated more into Australia.
But we've actually switched. We've gone to A200 beta shares now. It's because
so you still have existing, but you've just any new money?
We actually sold. I actually did like a debt recycling trick.
I
had about 150,000 of VAS. So A200 had the lower management fee, which again, bugger all, doesn't move the needle.
We're talking like a basis point here.
Originally
3 basis points, maybe?
I think at some point it was enough to like annoy me, and that was back when I was in my crazy days.
Yeah, I mean, 1 basis point difference would annoy you if you're not
doing phone credit.
Exactly right. So I spoke with my accountant and we did the debt recycling trick. So I was going to change. I think it was about 150 VAS, 150,000. And I was going to sell all that down and buy A200 just because I want to simplify it. And we had a advantageous tax year that year where I could spread, because we invest through a trust, I could spread the capital gains and we weren't going to pay any tax money, right? And before we did it, I'm like, can I wash that through the other split of our home loan? And he's like, yes, and there's some tricky accounting business you have to do when you're debt recycling in a trust, but that's what we did. So we sold all the shares, paid a split of the home loan to zero, withdrew it all out. So now our home loan is 100% tax deductible. All the interest is,
And so then you rebought a portfolio in line with actually what you wanted then, which was dividends.
Yeah. And I think now I'd have to have a look, because we are spending the dividends by the nature of a company that pays more dividends and they don't grow as much in like capital gains. By its very nature, our international split will grow over time and our Aussie split will shrink. And again, I want to repeat it that we actually spend our dividends. And I have met so many people, like my heroes in the fire community, I've met them in real life. They haven't tapped into their portfolio. They haven't tapped in.
Yeah.
I spent 4 years saving 70%.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, this is crazy. Like, if I'm going to be that much of a crazy person, I need to use this portfolio to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And there's a psychological barrier of physically clicking that mouse button and putting that sell order in to get the money. And it's the same thing. Like, I get it. Dividends versus capital gains. Capital gains is actually more efficient. But man, that psychological barrier is real and people need to be aware of it.
For those starting now, what would you do the same approach in terms of waiting until later on to focus on the dividends? Or what we see is a lot of people think that fire is all about getting the income, and so they start with an income investment.
Yeah.
Whereas we kind of believe that you should actually be focusing on growth.
Yes.
For the initial part.
I mean, you're not wrong technically, but again, it's like the psychological thing. I just know cash flow is the greatest.
But it's so tax inefficient.
It is.
It's slower growing. Everything you said about companies that pay big dividends grow slower.
Yeah.
Like it is. And you can get up charts and you can show me like it's
we will.
It is. It's just, I don't know. It's like that Mexican, the little girl in the Mexican ad, like why not both sort of thing. It makes sense to me that you just do something that works for you. And again, I'm going to relate it back to like health and fitness. If you need some sort of junk food once a week, add that in. If you're going to stick to your goals, and it's unrealistic to read every macro, micro, does it have this or that? Is it hitting these numbers? Stick to some investing goal or strategy that you'll stick to. And you probably won't know until you've done it for a few years. So this is why and I think you guys harp on about this all the time, which is fantastic. Just start now.
Yeah.
Like if you haven't started, that is the most important thing. Just start, because you're going to make mistakes. And I remember I didn't invest in the stock market for a year. So I come from properties, and it took me a year of reading before I dived in. And I'm glad we did, because it was a great year. It was like 2016. We first started investing in stocks, which has been like a fantastic year. And you just got to start. You will not figure out your life and your risk tolerance and everything until you start and you actually start doing it.
So I think that's a really important lesson there. Your fire portfolio, which doesn't include property, doesn't include super, 1.1 mil, and that you only started investing in the share market in 2016.
Yeah, but we had bulk equity in the prop. Like we had three properties that we, So I started.
I was going to try and make that a really inspiring lesson that anyone can start doing it. But yeah,
well, they can. They can, and you get like. My old man always said, there's that famous quote, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Like you have to just put yourself in a position to succeed. And that is, saving, that's investing, like just having a crack. The analysis paralysis, and you guys would have seen it all the time with everyone that you speak to, like analysis paralysis is something I see even with my friends. Like I remember coronavirus crash. I had a friend he had a lot of money and he's like, Matt, it's going down. Like, should I invest? I'm like, I don't know, mate. This could go down for another 2-3. I got no idea. All I know is like, it's gone down a lot. So I don't want to be on the hook for anything, but it's gone down a lot. And they hesitated and they didn't put it in.
Yeah.
Missed it.
And they missed it. But then they put it in later. And it's just like human psychology is like, now is the right time to invest when waters are calm and it's safe and everyone's saying it's good now. I'm going to invest then. But that's actually the worst time to invest. It's when there's blood in the streets and all that. Yeah.
if we look at your story, like no complex investments, no, crazy individual stocks that 10 bagged or anything, like 3 pretty vanilla ETFs, just like low cost, market tracking, index weighted ETFs. And I think your story is, the Morgan Housel quote, the biggest determinant of your future wealth is your savings rate. He's probably not envisaging 70%, but I think it is what we keep banging on about on this podcast. Like, start early, focus on your cash flow and your savings rate, and then put that money to work. It doesn't need to be complex.
No.
And you can be the next Aussie Firebug.
Yes.
Just get yourself into a position. Do you know, so we've never invested in individual stocks.
Oh, you should. It's pretty fun.
Do you know, and this is easy to say this now because of what it's done, and the hindsight is 2020. But I was such a big fan of Tesla all throughout the 2010s. And I had to have been one of the first 100 to drive the Model S when it first came to Australia in 2012, because I remember going to Inverloch and there was a guy from car sales, or there was a guy from some blogger, pretty big website that did car reviews was there as well. And I remember thinking when it did the autopilot. So have you ever driven one before?
No.
So you know what autopilot is?
Yeah.
And I just remember being so blown away by that technology. It's not full self-driving. It was just the stay in the lanes. But back in 2012, my mind was blown. It was driving around the highway. I was like, whoa. And I remember thinking I should really, this company is legit. No idea of the cash flows or anything like that.
Yeah.
And that would have been a nice one. That's been the closest one. Legitimately, I remember Googling how to invest in Tesla, but just never did it. And then I read all the literature about do not try to invest individual stocks. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that. But that one.
Nice. Stick to your guns.
The one that got away.
Well, it's turned out pretty successful for you.
Well, I'm happy with my life now, man.
Yeah. Love that.
Well, I think that brings us to the end, Matt. Thank you so much for coming in. As you said, we've been in each other's orbit for almost a decade now, but it's great to finally be in the same room outside of events and all the community stuff that we do. And congratulations on the family. I think a lot of people listening today would have taken a lot from that. So thank you.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. And kudos to you guys and everything that you've built. I know, and we both know, when we started, there wasn't this education around investing. It was so black box, and you had to go to a professional, and So I think that you guys are a big part of the positive change that has happened, and a lot of my friends listen to you guys. So
thank you.
Oh, nice.
That's good.
Yeah.
We appreciate
nice.
it.
Yeah.
No worries.
Nice.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks. Matt.
See you, Matt.
You have been listening to an Equity Mates Media production. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. This podcast is intended for education and entertainment purposes. Any advice is general advice only and has not taken into account your personal financial circumstances, needs, or objectives. Before acting on general advice, you should consider if it is relevant to your needs and read the relevant product disclosure statement. And if you're unsure, please speak to a financial professional. The hosts of this podcast and their guests may have positions in the companies mentioned. Equity Mates Media operates under an Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.